So a SWOT analysis is a business tool where you check for, you do an analysis of your strengths, your weaknesses, the opportunities in your marketplace, and the threats. And sort of it's an analytical planning, sort of a learning tool that business owners use in order to operate their business. It's been pretty popular. I think I probably heard about it 15, 20 years ago for the first time, and it may have been around longer than that. I don't know. But the phrase, a time and motion study, I think I've heard it, as a business owner. I heard about it the first time from my mentor, Mike Ferry. And Mike Ferry had a mentor. His name was Gunther Kloss. I'm imagining that he was German just by the name. But Gunther was a business consultant and a mentor to Mike Ferry. And Mike went to him and said, hey, I'd like to hire you to be, my coach. And this was probably in the 70s. And he was paying him, I think, a couple $1,000s a month back in the 70s, which was an extraordinary amount of money for a business coach. And one of the stories that I remember Mike sharing with me is that Gunther basically sat down with a legal pad and followed him around all day long. And he just, when Mike was in the office working, he'd sit down in a chair and he would sit there and he would write. And he would write and he would write and he would write. And Mike says, well, what are you doing? He says, I'm writing down everything you're doing. Just go to work. I'm going to write it down. And so that's the first time that I heard about a time and motion study. It is not something that you commonly hear about in real estate, but it is something that you hear a lot more in business. And that's one of the points that Bill made when we started off the conversation. So the one question that I'm going to ask everybody is, are you guys in a business? Do you guys have a business? I see yes, I see yeses there. Okay. So Bo said yes, and Gina said yes, and Sarah said yes, and Bill's got his thumb up. I don't know what Melissa's feeling, but the answer is yes. We are in a business. So my next question would be, is that why don't we think like business people very often? Why are we not, running our business the same way that we see other businesses working? And so, this whole idea of a time and motion study, I really wanted to go over it today because I think that doing an analysis of the things that we're doing in our daily schedule and in our business, we're in a place right now where the market is in a transition. The market is changing. There's good things going on. There's bad things going on. But whenever there's things going on, there's always opportunities. And the opportunities always are is that we can improve. And one of the ways to do that is to look at what it is that we're doing and look for ways to improve. And a time and motion study is one way to do that. So I had Nicole send this article out for all of you because I was hoping that you would get a chance to go through it. And, for those of you that did read it, is there any observations or anything that stood out when you read through, the 2 pages that we sent you? I think Gina's the only one that said she read it. So your thoughts, Gina?
I did a quick glance over of it, and I would say that it makes perfect sense. Like, really, it's about increasing productivity, right? And so a time and motion study helps you realize the wasted time, that you have in a day that could be used to put to your business.
Very good. Very good.
I read it, and I think just kind of like glancing at reading it, and it was talking about like where you can kind of allocate and make up time. And I think once I get the hang of KV Core, I think that's going to be a huge time saver.
Yeah,
it's all
for sure
automated for us.
Yeah. One of the phrases that it talks about in here is using programs and technology resources to work on automated tasks and to do some different things like that. So, absolutely, KV Core is going to be one of those tools. So this time and motion study, it's basically an analytical tool to look at what it is that we're doing, to assess the results that we're getting and look for things that are inefficient so that we can improve them or change them. I highlighted, I'm just going to go through the things I highlighted out of it, streamline work processes, eliminating redundant or low value tasks, focusing on high energy or high value activities such as client engagement, property showings, etc. It also talks about team leaders, and as I'm looking here, I think Dana's got a huge company, so she's got a big team that she's working with. But team leaders can do these time and motion studies to identify bottlenecks in the work processes that we have. Looking at the way that the team is organized, look at the strengths and weaknesses of each of the people that are involved. Provide training or reallocate what people are doing. All of these things are the results of making the effort to do a time and motion study. Okay. One of the things that I'll share with you, and nobody said this, and I was wondering, if this sounds like really corporate kind of writing. Did it sound like really corporate kind of writing to anybody?
Sort of. I mean, it seemed commonsensical though.
Okay. Well, I want to share with all of you is that one of the things that I always do with my business is look for easier ways to do things. One of the definitions of a lazy man, if you want to know the easiest way to do any job, ask a lazy man. That's a phrase out there. If you want to know the easiest way to do a job, always ask a lazy man, because I don't like to waste time and energy on different tasks. And so this is the first thing that you guys have seen where I use Chat GPT to write the outline or the organizational thoughts for the things that I wanted to present today. Basically, I went in and I said, hey, I want a 500-word essay on the value of a time and motion study as it relates to real estate agents and team leaders, to talk about efficiency and productivity, workflow, and profitability. And there are some things that I went in because I wanted to make sure that it was specific to our group. So I went in and edited what it was that I did. But I probably, if you guys have ever seen me write a letter, it takes me hours to write something like this because I'm like dealing with every word and doing all this other crap. I mean, 5 minutes later, all I had to do was edit this thing and it was done. Okay.
That's actually very cool, Mark. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Bill. See, I mean, I am, I work too many hours in a day to be called a lazy man. And yet I really don't like wasting time and energy. I don't like doing, I mean, if it's worth doing, think about this, if it's worth doing for money. So if I'm going to be doing things, I want to be as profitable as I can with the time that I'm allocating to it. None of us have an infinite amount of time. None of us have an infinite amount of time. So by doing a time and motion study, we are able to be most productive with the time that we have available to us. And that's where I think that, if you're serious about this business and serious about life, that's one of the things that you would want to focus on. And that's what I'm encouraging everybody to do. So any questions so far? I'm not going to go through any more of the thing that I had Chat GPT write for you guys, but is there any thoughts as we get started on the practical parts of it?
Mark, sometimes I think I can get buried in the details, and I'm reminded again of that perfect is the enemy of good.
That is true. All of those real estate, I don't know if it's a maxim, I don't know exactly what the right word to describe all of these, one-line phrases that we have from real estate, time kills deals, perfect, perfect is the enemy of the good. I mean, there's all of these things that we hear in business that everybody's heard before, but they're true. They're there for a reason. they're there for a reason. So let's dive into a little bit of a time and motion study. Now, I'm going to assume, and I know that this is probably a mistake, is that everybody does exactly the same thing every day with their business. Is that true? Okay. Why not? Give me some answers. Why not?
Because there's always different variables, different people, different things coming in, different obstacles. that no 2 days are the same. You can have a schedule and a plan to make it the same, but I try to get the same things done and make sure, I'm working on my business, practicing scripts, doing social media, but other things get in the way in between. Not in the way, I shouldn't say in the way, because it could be like, I have a showing that I didn't have yesterday, so I have to schedule that in, or a home inspection, or,
Okay. So here would be probably where I would start with that, because I agree, it's true. Every single day is different. Some days we have appointments, some days that we don't. Wouldn't it be nice if we had appointments every day? Wouldn't it be nice if we had appointments every day? I mean, I don't know anybody that gets paid for doing a CMA, and I don't know anybody that gets paid for previewing property, and I don't know anybody that gets paid for sending out emails. Those are activities that lead to business. But the thing that really makes us money is when we're belly to belly or face to face with a client that can actually do a transaction. That's when we actually make money. So it's really interesting when we think about, our daily schedule, is that the hard thing for real estate people to do is create a daily schedule that they can repeat every single day, because every single day is different. And that's what we're talking about. Okay. So I'm going to share with you a thought. How many of you have been on a commercial airline pilot plane? How many people have flown on a commercial plane? Does anybody have any flight training? I think Dana does. Ever fly a plane? Who's flown a plane before? Okay. So Dana knows this because of her training. Did you know that a pilot, when he is going to take off in a 747, goes through a very long checklist of things that they're going to be doing? They check the mixture of the fuel, they check the fuel tank, the levels that are in there. They do their flight plan, they check the magnetos. I mean, there's a whole long laundry list of things that these pilots do before they ever go off, to try and take off. And they do it exactly the same way every time. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think
They
it's for
don't.
safety.
Well, if you miss one step, you could have very bad results.
How bad could the results be?
Crash and burn.
We could all be dead. Okay. I mean, so when you're
Well,
flying,
even a small plane, when I would fly solo, you do your checklist to make sure that your equipment is, in perfect operational condition.
right. So when you're a pilot, you have a checklist of things that you follow exactly the same way every single time, because it leads to success, which is that you get to the other place where you're going to land safely and you don't die in the process. Why is it in real estate, in our real estate career, that we don't have the same kind of discipline? I'm not saying that our schedule is going to be the same every single moment of every day, but why are we not doing things exactly the same way? Why are we not figuring out what works and repeating that over and over and over and over every time? An airline pilot does not follow the checklist 3 out of 10 times. They follow it 10 out of 10 times. Why do real estate agents pre-qualify their customers 1 out of 10 times or 4 out of 10 times, but they don't do it 10 out of 10 times? Why do real estate agents prospect sometimes once a week, sometimes 4 times a week, sometimes none a week, when an airline pilot every 60 days or 90 days goes in and redoes their training and does all of the things that they need to do to keep their license up to date so that they're flying safely? Why are we behaving differently than airline pilots? It's a question. And I think the answer is because we can. And because usually the results, when we don't follow the steps and we don't follow the schedule and we don't follow the checklist, we don't die. We may lose weight because we're not eating a lot, but we won't die usually. Make sense?
Well, isn't some of it that sometimes you have a lot of business and then you get all excited and you're working those 2 or 3 sales, and then you're not prospecting because you're spending your time working those 2 or 3 sales. Then when those sales are over, now you're like, oh, now I got nothing in my pipeline.
Yeah.
I think sometimes once you have a couple of sales going, maybe that's like a distraction or a something from the prospecting part. It kind of, I mean, that's just my observation as somebody who closes checks for people. I'll notice this agent had 3 in a row and then I don't see anything for 2 months.
Right, right. Okay, and they call that the real estate cycle or the 90-day cycle. I mean, that was the same when I first worked with Tim. He talked about that. You work, you have no business, and so you work and prospect, and you get a couple of clients, and then all of a sudden now you're working with the clients, and you're working like a fool with them, and you get them in escrow, and then all you're doing is working on your deals. And you close the deal. Typically, people will get their check, they'll go on a week vacation, and then they come back and they have no business again. So what do? They work like a fool, for a month, finding a couple of clients, and then they work with the clients and they get a couple of deals, they make a check, and then they go on vacation, and then they come back and they're broke. You guys have seen that, right? We don't want to do that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the time and motion study. Is that when every single new person that I've ever seen get into the business, I tell them this thing, is that you can manage your activities, you cannot manage your results. You can manage your activities, but you cannot manage your results. Over time, you can predict your results by keeping track of your numbers, but you can't manage your results. Okay. I think I asked this question to somebody recently. Does anybody know what an actuary is? Actuary is somebody that works for insurance companies. They're the mathematicians that figure out what the probabilities are, that how many people are going to die each year, how many people are going to die of cancer, how many new births are going to happen this year. They're statisticians, basically, that work for insurance companies. And because they're working with a lot of numbers, what they're able to do is they're able to predict exactly, I mean, they can tell you in a given zip code how many people are going to die every year. They can tell you what they're going to die from. They can tell you how many people are going to be born in that zip code, because they have access to all of that data and all of these prediction tools. The only thing they can't tell you is they can't tell you who is going to die. They can't tell you who's going to get hit by a car. They know how many are going to get hit by a car in that zip code, but they don't know who. That makes sense. And that's the same thing with our business and our schedule, is that we can manage our activities that generate our business, the activities that are the engine that drive our business, but we can't manage who those people are that come to us. Does that make sense? Okay, so I always make this suggestion to people, is that you should have a 5-hour workday. Okay, your 5-hour workday is you should have an hour of education, improving your business, improving your skills, improving your knowledge. You could be studying the market statistics. You could be reading, economics about what's happening in the market. You could be learning new skills or new program. I mean, just improving the skills that you bring. So 1 hour of that. I always tell people there should be 2 hours every single day of trying to find new business. Lead generation is one way to say it. Prospecting is the other one. I like the idea of promoting yourself to potential clients and asking if they need your help. That's the way I like it. If I'm talking with Gina and say, hey, I'm a real estate agent and I'd love to help you. Do you know anybody that wants my help? That's promoting my business. That conversation is promoting and asking for business from people. So 2 hours of that. There should be an hour a day of learning your inventory, seeing the new inventory in person, not scrolling through it on the computer, because if you scroll through the pictures on the computer, that means that you are just as knowledgeable about the real estate market as your clients when they're searching on Zillow and Realtor.com. So if you want to be of value to your customers, make sure that you're seeing your inventory in person so that you can tell things that they can't see from the pictures. The last hour is any administrative work or any preparation work that's a result of your prospecting. So if you're prospecting, you might get somebody that says, hey, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Moonridge. So you're going to do some research for them in that administrative hour. Somebody might say, I want to sell my house. Would you prepare a CMA for me to get ready for an appointment next week? So you're having an administrative hour where you're preparing for your appointment. That's 5 hours of work there. Education, 2 hours of prospecting, 1 hour of learning your new inventory, and 1 hour of administrative work. That 5 hours, we can manage that. We can manage that. We can't manage whether anybody is willing to meet us today for an appointment or wants to see property. We can't manage the results, but we can manage those 5 hours. That makes sense. Now, assuming you're a full-time agent and you're working 8 hours a day, that leaves 3 hours every single day for appointments. And it leaves you for a listing presentation or a showing appointment. Obviously, you can stretch that to 4 hours and do some different things as time goes on. But you can see from my description is that there is 5 hours a day that if you have no business, that you can put into a schedule and follow it, and you don't have to change it, right? You can do that, okay? I think the challenge for a lot of people is that because some weeks that 5 hours gets messed up with 2 showing appointments in one day, so I can't do that all day long, is that they get rid of the 5 hour schedule the rest of the week. And that's the engine that drives your business. It drives your knowledge of the marketplace. It drives your ability to get new business because you're prospecting. It drives your business because you know your product by looking at property. And it drives your business because you are preparing to help the people that have identified themselves that say, I need your help. And that's 5 hours a day, okay? Does anybody have a schedule that looks like those 5 things that I shared? Okay. Yeah, I know that we talked about it. Okay, very good. Okay. So here's what you can do to do a time and motion study, assuming that you have a schedule is write down every single thing you do, everything you do your entire work week, and keep a written record for a 2-week period. I got to the office at 8:15. I made a cup of coffee. I sat down. I read Yahoo. Then I went, and Nicole's laughing. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I mean, I've been working in offices for a long time. I see what goes on in there. Okay. I decided to start prospecting, and I dialed the phone for a few times, and somebody was mean to me. So I thought I needed a break. And I, commiserated with one of my coworkers because he had a bad day too, or he had a bad client too. And then we said, the heck with it, let's go have lunch. And, I've got an appointment, later on Saturday. So I went out and I previewed 3 or 4 homes. And then, my friend wanted to go for a mountain bike ride. And I says, what the heck, I'm going to go do it. I mean, write down what you do for 2 weeks. I'm not saying that's a great schedule, what I just shared with you. But for a 2-week period, write down every single thing that you do over 2 weeks. Record the start time, record the finish time, and record what you accomplished. Everything, including when you are interrupted. I think one of the biggest things that you'll find by doing a time and motion study is how often we are not in control of our business, and that we are controlled by the interruptions and the people that are around us. Okay, I mean, I see some heads nodding there. Okay, I don't know where the idea comes from, is that if the phone rings, we have to answer it. I don't know where that comes from, but or if there's a ding on the computer because an email came in that we have to look at it immediately when the ding goes off on our computer. One of the things that one of the books that was written by the owner of KW that I really liked is it's called The One Thing. And the basic premise of the book is, in our society today, they talk about multitasking as being this great virtue. That, everybody is, I'm a great multitasker. Well, if you're a great multitasker, that means you're less efficient than if you learn how to focus on one thing and work on it until it's finished. Every single study that talks about productivity is about focus on the one thing. It's not about multitasking. Multitasking is overrated, okay? So record the start time, record the finish time, and write down what you accomplished, everything, including when you're interrupted, and be honest. Write down exactly what you're doing. You don't have to share it with anyone else if you don't want to. But for the exercise to be useful and meaningful to you, you should be writing down exactly what it is that you're doing. Okay. For example, and all of these things that I'm sharing with you, I've done them. I've had a coach. Tony Smith was my coach. So, for example, 3 hours of prospecting time looks great on your little record for the day. I had 3 hours of prospecting. But if you only speak to 7 people during that 3 hours and 5 of them are your coworkers over coffee, it's pretty easy to figure out that what you're doing on paper, may look great, but the results that you're going to get from it is not going to be very valuable. So we can agree then that we would want to probably adjust what it is that we're doing to become more productive and more profitable. So this exercise usually will demonstrate 2 things at the end of it, if you're willing to do it. One is how little the typical real estate professional is engaged in productive activities. Now, I said productive activities. Okay. Sitting in the office on floor time is a responsibility that we have. But again, it may not be the most productive use of your time. If you're sitting on your couch or if you're sitting in the office, your productivity is about the same. Right? So if you say, I had 4 hours of floor time this morning, but you didn't do anything during that floor time except read Yahoo, then you were not productive at all. Okay. So it is, if you keep a record of the things that you're doing, it's going to become very apparent how little the typical real estate agent does. And if you write this down, you're going to think, man, I'm not really doing that much, but I'm doing more than my competitors. I'm doing more than my colleagues. I'm doing more than my peers. This is not about better or worse. This is about how do you get better. This is about how you become more profitable. Okay. And the second thing that this demonstrates is when you really look at how much we actually do from a productive work standpoint each week, you're going to realize how well paid we are for the work that we do. Okay. It's my belief that if I were to scrunch down my real productive time into what I actually do each week, that I'd probably be making $1,000 an hour for when I'm actually working. Okay. And I think it's the same thing for a lot of real estate people. That's how much we're paid for when we're really working. Notes. So any questions where we're at so far? Any comments? Go ahead, Dana.
So a few years, maybe 2 to 3 years ago, or even longer, let's just say a few years ago, I realized we have 3 offices, or 4, including Palm Springs when we had staff there. And we're like, we didn't know you're not staff. But what we did in a nutshell is we created an activity, what do we call a daily log. So each one of the admin staff, and we created it, like, it has a format based on their activities or the activities of the front desk admin staff. So that has really been helpful for us because we're not at all the offices, but they fill out the activity daily log. So it not only keeps them accountable, we know what's going on throughout the day at the office. It keeps the staff more productive because they have a certain amount of things that they're expected to get done and cover and be aware of. And it gives them more a feeling of responsibility for the office that they're working in, and they're all the same. So all the offices operate the same systems and everything. So I think there's some agent worksheets like that. Does Mike Ferry have? I've seen it somewhere. Maybe it's Mike Ferry, where you actually have a worksheet that lists the activities. that an agent should be doing, and then you can play with it too, however you want it to look for yourself. But anyway, that activity log was really the game changer for us with our offices and with the staff. And for them, with us, and then our meetings, our weekly meeting, or do we have a weekly or monthly meeting? We have a monthly meeting.
Yeah. The time and motion study, keeping track of what we're doing. It's good for teams as well as individuals. It's good for organizations to try it. It's good for communication. I think that's one of the paragraphs that was in, the document that you guys were looking at or that I sent out to you. Particularly if you're involved with a team, and obviously a company is a team, and when you're managing staff, it's a team. If you're a team leader and you have other people, is that, communication can get very difficult. And so, one of the easiest ways to manage yourself or to manage your team, is to implement these kinds of accountability of records, so that, as you're going through your day and you're writing down what it is that you're doing, you can send it to your team leader and they know exactly what you're doing. Okay. Or you can send it to your, whoever you're reporting to. If you're reporting to your spouse, there's a good thing there. I did work this week. I promise I did work this week. Here, look at my logs. I did it. Okay. The other thing I remember, this is really funny about Mike Ferry, and this goes back to probably 1992, is that, Mike had one time, he had a top producer retreat where he invited the spouses. He invited all of the spouses to come to the retreat down in Palm Desert. And it was a great idea for Mike, because really what he wanted to do is he wanted to have the families buy into the work of a real estate agent, because this is an emotionally difficult business with the ups and downs and the rejection and everything. So Mike's idea was that, hey, we can get the spouses on board and supporting their real estate agent and the family. That's a good thing. So he invited the spouses, and he said a lot of they never did it again, because after the retreat was over, a lot of the people's spouses were pissed off at them, because now they knew what their job was and they knew they weren't doing their job every day. Okay, Dan is laughing at that one. It's sort of fascinating, is that, we real estate agents, from the outside, a lot of times it doesn't look like we're working. And sometimes it's because we're not. Okay, and so keeping track of what it is that you're doing and being accountable is a good thing. So this is all, we've talked so much, so far about your own personal activities and what it is that you're doing. There's another thing that I wanted to share with you about, and this is a time and motion study for your work tasks. Okay. There are things that we do every single day in our business, or we should be doing routinely in our business, that are the same, like starting up an airplane and flying off. There should be a right way or a best practice or a best way to do a lot of the things that we're doing. So I'm going to give you a list, of some things that are in my mind and the things that my team and I work on. What is your pre-qualifying process for a new client or a new lead? Whether they're a buyer or seller, client, what does your pre-qualifying process look like? Okay. The most obvious starting point for that is that most everybody that I've worked with a team will have a new lead sheet where they'll put the guy's name and, first and last name, telephone number, mailing address, email address, whether they're a buyer or seller, what are they looking for? Simply having a sheet of information that you're looking for your new leads to get started in that process, that seems a lot better than a scribbled note on one of those little Post-it notes that gets lost or thrown in the trash. Okay, what is your process with your new leads that come in? Do you fill that thing out? What questions do you ask them? What information do you want to know? Have you ever thought about it? Okay, and so you can create a study of your activities, time and motion of what it is that you're doing with your new clients, to become more efficient and have a better stickier relationship with them. Okay. What do you do with them after you've gotten them and you've written all of these things down and you decide that you want to work with them? Do you have a KV Core program for active buyers? Do you have a KV Core program for long-term buyers? Do you have a KV Core program for your future business, not your past clients, but your future business, your sphere of influence, right? Do you have a plan for that? Okay, you can create a checklist and a plan and do it with a time and motion study to make sure that you're not wasting steps along the way. Do you have a best practice or for preparing a listing presentation? Do you do it the same every time, or do you just wing it? You know, is it something that you prepare and print up? Is it something that you do with a PowerPoint presentation? What does your comparable market analysis look like? How do you present it? Is it the same every time? What are the steps that you do when you're preparing for a listing presentation? And is it efficient? Is it easy? Is it quick? Is it duplicatable? Does it look the same every single time? Or are you winging it? Okay. Your listing presentation, is it the same every time or is it different? Have you ever practiced and role played a listing presentation? Those are good questions. Okay. Very easy system to get down to where it should be the same every single time is when you're preparing a listing contract in the disclosures. Okay. I mean, every time you take a listing, you know, and I think everybody here has taken some listings, if not a lot of them, is that the paperwork is the same every single time. Do you have a checklist? Do you have your template in place? Do you follow it and do it the same way every single time? I mean, I know that after practice, when you have a checklist, is that you can do a listing and all of the disclosures in about 5 minutes with your templates by putting in the information you need and printing it off and being done with it. Okay, or sending it off in DocuSign. I mean, so there's all of these things that we can do if we do them the same way over and over and over again, that we can become very efficient and very quick with our time. Remember, it is our time that is the most valuable thing to us. Okay. New listing marketing and a servicing checklist. I mean, when you take a listing, do you promise different things to different clients, or do you usually have the same things that you promise each of them? Do you have a way to hold yourself accountable to follow through each week to get those things done? Something to think about. Okay. Sometimes we do add things special for a client, but that should be in addition to our normal checklist, not instead of a normal checklist. Here's one I wrote down: price reduction script. Is there anybody that has a listing that needs a price reduction? Okay, me too. We all do. Okay. Do you have listings? Some of them probably need to be reduced. Okay. So do you have a script, something that you say to them? Do you have a way to reintroduce it to the market after you get the price reduction? So I have something at 420,000, it gets reduced to 399. I change it in the MLS. Half of the agents in town are asleep. They don't even see the price reduction. They don't know that it's been reduced. I mean, they saw it 2 months ago and it was overpriced, and they've been ignoring it ever since. Do we do anything to bring it back to the marketplace's attention that we've reduced an overpriced listing down to something that's sellable? Something to think about that we should be doing. Preparing a purchase agreement, that process should be very, very similar to your new listing preparation. When you open an escrow, do you have a program that you repeat over and over, just like a airline pilot? Do you have a checklist that you're doing exactly the same way every time? Your sphere of influence and your future stay in touch client relationship program. I mean, do you have a program that you're following over and over again? I know most of the people that I've talked with here, I mean, I talk about, 4 and 4, is that you talk to your future clients in your sphere 4 times a year, that you send them something of value 4 times a year, so that you're doing this throughout the year because you're building that relationship. Are you doing that routinely the same way year in and year out? And is it working? And if it's not working, what adjustments would you need to make in order to make it work? Make sense? So final questions is, if you spend the time to do a time and motion study for your processes and for your schedule, you can improve your productivity and your profitability. But more importantly, it's going to make it easier to do that if you actually identify what your job description is and what it is that you're doing. Because then you're going to be able to ask yourself these questions. What can I do that's automated? How can I automate what I'm doing to save time and money? And the other thing would be is, who can I delegate to? What can be delegated to other people, and who can I delegate it to? So my last thing for you that I wanted to share with all of you to think about is that there are really two kinds of activities in our real estate business. Well, actually, there's three. There's three. One is income generating business. There's income generating things that we do. There are things that are client service related. They're client servicing, they're building on that relationship, making them feel warm and fuzzy and good about the relationship. And the last thing is what I call stress relieving or tension relieving activities. Okay. Those are the things when we're tired, when we're stressed, when we're overworked, that, we just need a break. And so we'll do all kinds of things. We'll have a cup of coffee, we'll scroll on the internet, we'll give a friend a hug, we'll go for a walk, we'll go for a bike ride, we'll go to the gym, we'll read a book. I mean, something that is stress relieving, a stress relieving activity. It's important that you know the difference in those things. Okay. And the reason that I bring that up is that a lot of people are doing stress relieving activities when they're on their floor time. They're in the floor time and they're stressed about other things that are going on. And so they do their stress relieving activities when they're in the office, when they could be doing something productive. And so try and make the distinction about things that you're doing that is creating business for you, that's helping generate business for you. Delineate which of those things that are not necessarily generating you income, but are making your clients happy. And then, ask yourself the third one: what are the things that aren't productive at all and aren't making my clients feel good, but they make me feel good? Okay. And then ask yourself the question: do you really want to be doing those things that make you feel good when you're at work? I mean, I'd rather leave work and go do something somewhere else that feels good rather than being at work, because then it's so easy to get into that mindset. Well, I was at the office 8 hours today working. Well, no, I was doing stress relieving activities 6 hours of the day while I was pretending to be working. That makes sense. So those are the thoughts that I have for you guys today. I'm curious as to any thoughts or questions that you guys might have.
Well, Mark, I think the checklist idea is good. I've used one forever, but it sure does add some discipline. I think that's what you're talking about,
Right.
Is putting discipline into the work environment. I like it. I like what you had to say.
Okay. Do you ever periodically go back and revisit your checklist and make adjustments to it?
Oh, absolutely. The last one, I have a checklist, and the last edit that I made on it was putting a check mark in there that I need to upload to SkySlope. I didn't have that check mark in there. I did it mentally, but I didn't have it in the checklist. So I've got some things to follow now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's a great exercise. Bill is an independent agent that is working, I think you're working solely with yourself. And so it's a good way to make sure that you're following your processes to make sure that your clients are getting a consistent service, and that you're not missing any of your income because you're not getting paid because something's not done. But this idea of going in and changing your checklist is if you ever decide to hire an assistant, because Bill has this checklist in place of what his best practices are. If he were to decide that he wanted an assistant, he could take his checklist to somebody and say, here are the 10 things I want you to do, or here's the 15 things that I want you to do, and here's how you do each one of them. And so now he has basically cloned himself because he's told his new assistant what he wants them to do, and he's shown them exactly how he does it. And now Bill's got more time to do stress relieving activities or more money making activities. Make sense?
Yeah, if it has any value, I can share that checklist with everybody here.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, please send that to Nicole so she can send it out to everybody. And I'll send that Mike Ferry daily review things. The people that did foundation saw it before, but I'll make sure we get you guys another copy of it.
And that's what I was gonna, oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Gina.
Bill. I was gonna say that's what I found so helpful about this, because we did cover quite a bit of this in the foundations program, but for me, that was a number of months ago now. So this is really a helpful reminder, because I have strayed from, really honing in on the 5-hour workday.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you do those 5 things and you don't have a client at the end of the day, I would say take the rest of the day off. And then tomorrow do the same 5 hours. I mean, you can't do those 5 hours of driving the engine of your business and not get results. You can't possibly not get results by working those 5 hours. I think the challenge is a lot of people focus on the clients and the results, and they think, okay, well, I've got a client, I'm going to work with a client. Well, now I don't have any clients, I'm not going to do anything. No, if you focus on the 5 hours, the clients will take care of themselves. So thanks, Gina, for that. Anybody else? Go ahead, Melissa.
I just wanted to see on when you were going over the pre-qual process or the listing presentation process, like I do have a checklist and do a new lead sheet and, ask them if they've been in touch with a lender or if they're working with another agent or certain questions like that, or with a listing presentation, put together a CMA or print comps, that type of thing. Is there anything that you suggest or anything that you use or do that we should make sure is on our process for those things?
Or for your pre-listing,
For like when you were going over what you do, like your pre-qual process for a new lead or your listing presentation process, like what are your suggestions that should be on our processes to do those? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would have to see what yours looks like to see if there's anything different. But here's my process is I use the Mike Ferry pre-qual script. Hey, Melissa, before I come out, there are a number of questions I need to ask you. Okay, please role play with me.
Okay.
Okay. Melissa, when I see you Saturday at 2, are you planning to list your home with me?
Well, we'll have to see once we go over everything.
Okay, so you're going to be, if you're comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list with me, or is there some other thing that would be holding you back?
Well, I'm interviewing a couple different agents.
Okay, and I was going to ask you that as well. Great. Okay, so when I see you, how much do you want to list your home for?
My ideal number is 500,000.
Okay, so your goal is to get to 500. Awesome. As a professional real estate agent, Melissa, I study homes and prices every single day. And so I assume that you're going to be really interested in hearing those numbers so you can list your home at a price that will cause your home to sell, correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So have you and your husband talked about it? What price won't you go below?
I don't think we'll go below 475.
Okay, so that's bottom number. Thanks for sharing that with me. Okay, so remind me again, why are you selling?
We're moving out of state.
Yeah, you're moving out of state, and how soon did you want to be there?
Hopefully within the next couple months.
Okay, in the next couple of months. Okay, and so I'm assuming that you want all of your cash out. You don't want to carry any financing, right?
Yes. No, I don't.
Okay. Now, you've never thought about selling it yourself, have you?
No.
Okay, great. That's a good idea not to try and do that, especially if you want to get moved out of state. Okay. So would you mind describing your home for me? Any changes that you've made to the property, just to give me a heads up before I arrive, because I haven't seen it before?
Sure, we've done new flooring, updated the bathrooms and the kitchens, and added a new deck in the backyard.
Okay. How long ago did you do that?
I would say all of that was done over the last 5 years.
Okay, and did you put in granite or tile or wood floors? Can you give me an idea of the materials that you did in your remodel?
We did granite in the kitchen, wood floors throughout, and tile in the bathroom.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to be sending over some information to you and your husband before I arrive. Do you think you would have a few moments to review it before I get there Saturday?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And do you have any questions for me before I arrive?
No?
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to seeing you and your husband Saturday at 2. We'll see you then.
Great. Thank you. We'll see you then.
Okay. So, I go through the main reason why I went through that process. Does anybody recognize that script? Yeah. Okay. I use the same roadmap in the script, but I deliver it to different people based on their personality style and the answers they give. Okay. And so when I talk about doing a time and motion study, how many times do you think that I have used that script?
Probably hundreds, thousands.
Hundreds, hundreds. Okay. And the reason that I use that script is because it works. Okay. And so if I don't ask them questions that are on that script, then I get out there and they surprise me with things that I am not prepared to answer. I can wing the answer, but I'm not prepared for it. If that makes sense. So, when I talk, there is no one thing, Melissa, that I can share with you is that you must have, this in your pre-qualifying process. What I'm saying is to look at it, do a time and motion study, evaluate, use it as an analytical tool to improve your processes. The Japanese, and I'm looking around, some of the people here are too young to know this, but back in the early 80s, the Japanese were known for making the finest cars. They were killing Ford and they were killing GM and they were killing all of these other US automakers in the industry because they were so focused on quality. And they had this word that they talked about, it was called Kaizen. And the word Kaizen means continuous improvement, continuous little itty bitty bits of improvement over time. If you improve your processes 1% a month, at the end of the year, you've increased a ton. And that was what the Japanese did to kill, at the time, the US automaking industry, is that they were committed to continuous improvement. And I think that's what I'm asking all of you guys to do with your business in the time and motion study, is to look closely at it, improve it, implement things that work, and then come back periodically to upgrade what you're doing. When you get a new idea and you want to implement it, go back and change your processes. So I think I've exhausted all of my good ideas for the day. Thank all of you for coming. If it was valuable, if you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. We'll get you a copy of Bill's checklist, and we'll get you a copy of the daily activity log that you guys can use if you decide to do your time and motion study. Okay.
We also have, I don't know if it's helpful, but I was thinking of Melissa, from the Mike Ferry thing, those lead generation forms. And I just printed out a ton of them and I use those like with a new lead, because it kind of almost, prompts you through the script a little bit because you have those. So, Nicole, I know you have those because you sent them out to us.
Yeah, will you send me a copy or stick one on my desk?
I'll
and I
put
can
it
take
on
a
the
look at it?
attachment with the recap.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have something? Okay, you guys have a great day. Go sell something.